I'm Claudine Wong, joining you from KTVU in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I have my two favorite sisters with me now. We've got Katherine Wilson, who's joining us from Italy, and we have Anna Foss Wilson, who is joining us from New York City, and we've had this continuing discussion over the last several weeks about how you guys are doing and how we are all doing in different parts of the world. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so I like to do this because I always like to bring up, where we are so people get a good perspective of just kind of the world as we know it right now. And so it just gives everyone a good idea of where you guys are and where we all are. US, of course, is at the top in number of confirmed cases, a little over 1.2 million. If we take a look over here in terms of how we're doing these numbers are always, I think, for me, really hard to look at, but they give us a good picture. Italy on here, which was the epicenter at one time in the times that we've been talking, Catherine, now below the United Kingdom, and then New York, of course, as we talk about the 25,000 deaths there, but also the 58,000 people who have recovered. So that's where we are right now. Catherine, Italy is reopening. Anna, you have some changes going on in New York as well, as certainly while the numbers look better, it does not feel like we are out of the woods by any respect. How are you guys feeling respectively in terms of life where you are? Catherine, we'll start with you in Italy.
Well, yesterday was the first day of the easing of the lockdown. So we started 2 months ago. It was the beginning of March when the full lockdown was ordered. So it does feel like, I think they've talked about Italy being the longest and strictest lockdown of any of the European or North American countries. And so there was great excitement, the idea of being able to go to the parks again, the idea of being able to go out and take a walk. For me, the idea of going and getting an espresso coffee was so crucial. But at the same time, there's a feeling of trepidation. I mean, there's really a sense of we have to go slowly, because we know that any false steps at this time could really put us back, not only where we were a few months ago, but maybe even worse. So
well, I think there's a lot of buildup in terms as well of how people think it should look. This return to normal is not as quick or automatic as we think either.
Right. I think it's it's interesting when I read things about open or closed. I mean, it's not like that. It's like you open up a little crack, and little, some sectors in some ways with very strict rules, and then you see how it goes, and it's really one step at a time. But at the same time, we can be optimistic because we can go to the park, kids can run around. And so it was so needed.
Yeah, you'll take it. And you took some video, and we'll get to that in a second. I do want to show this article from Forbes that I was reading this morning too, when they said, this is freedom post-lockdown, Italy, not how we imagined. You're very optimistic. Do you find that people are saying, I wanted more? I mean, there were the really positive posts of people celebrating, but also people who want this to speed up a little bit differently?
Well, I think it's a time of a lot of contention, because whereas in the lockdown, pretty much everybody knew this is what we have to do. We're all in this together. We're going to, roll up our shirt sleeves, lock the doors, and stay inside. Now it's a lot more of a matter of personal choice. How do you see it? How do I see it? And quite honestly, it's in a way harder because you go back to some uncertainty. Like, I remember the times when I wrote the article at the very beginning when my teen was saying, well, can I go out? My friends are going out. And we're kind of back to that a little bit. I mean, yesterday my son said to me, I'm going to play basketball. The basketball court is open. I'm going to play basketball. And, I got out my phone to text the other mothers, like, well, what do you think? Do you think we can do it? Because technically it's allowed, but are we really going to go there?
There is a big comfort level to all that we're talking about that I don't think any of us have, or at least a lot of us. Maybe some people have arrived there, but I certainly think we're going at different paces. Anna, let's talk about New York and how New York is feeling these days. You last time we talked, were recovering from what you're pretty sure was, COVID-19, and your fiance as well, and then you're home with a little one, and I know life there, while the numbers are looking better, it still feels like normal is a little distant.
Yeah, definitely doesn't feel normal. We, of course, don't have enough tests, didn't get tested, don't know that we had it for sure. And we have started taking walks. We feel better, which is great, and are certainly very lucky. But we wear masks. The 2-year-old is getting good at wearing the mask.
Even though, are they technically required to? Because some of the requirements are usually eased for under 6.
Yeah, maybe she doesn't have to, but it's good to get in the habit.
Habit of doing it, yeah. And if she doesn't mind wearing it.
No, I mean, until she minds wearing it, but until she wants to eat something or drink something, and then, but New York has started contact tracing, which I think is going to be helpful, and we're just, we're just not. I think at a place that we can even be super hopeful, because we just don't know, because of the amount of deaths and the lack of testing and funds. And
well, so and there seems to be a lot of back and forth, right, to celebrating the lower numbers, but they're still high. And then, we should say the latest was, the subway service. This is just the Twitter account of talking about, they're closing that system for the first time in 115 years. I mean, so you're still in these unprecedented, spots. I think, the New York Times also did this piece that was, new hotspots emerging, no sign of respite. Like when you see that, even though you say, okay, well, the daily death toll dropped in half, but then you're like, oh, okay, but still now we have these hotspots, and now the subway obviously is so critical to life in New York City that it doesn't, I think that from an outsider's perspective certainly prevents any feeling of, okay, we're in good shape here.
Yeah, there's no hope of a babysitter in sight right now. Cleaning lady is not going to happen. So I've been doing a lot of that.
What about the sidewalks? Yes. I'm just curious about, are there people that kind of move away from other people walking down the street, or are there people out walking?
Yeah, and we stop like New Yorkers and see our neighbors and talk to each other through our masks really loudly, 6 feet apart, oh yeah, I'm ordering from this place, and I'm ordering, groceries from this, or I'm going to Trader Joe's at this hour, and, a lot of informational stuff gets passed along that way.
I mean, I think that is how do you stay connected without being connected is what really everyone across the world is trying to figure out, and Catherine, you sent me a bunch of videos of life, and let me just pull up one of them, but this is when you're talking about getting your espresso, right? This seems to me something that we are seeing in San Francisco. Anna, you seen this in New York, a similar, where you are out, mask on, you're still trying to go to your local restaurant, but there's a lot of this curbside through a window kind of thing.
It's sort of it reminds me of lemonade stands when we were little. Yes. All the bars have the little table with the little, and then you put your money in the thing. But it's, they're doing what they can do. And now we are able to get food at restaurants and carry out, because before we couldn't do any sort of carry out or delivery or anything like that. So that's
okay. So that was even stricter. Yeah, we've always been allowed in the Bay Area in San Francisco and California to get takeout from restaurants. It was more of a question of could they economically stay open? Did it make sense for them? But this is a new thing for you then.
Yes, it's a very new thing. And some of our friends who have restaurants in the neighborhood, which obviously in Rome, the little trattorie are, basically survive with tourists. And they've said, we don't know if we can open again, because now to be able to open, we have to do so much work in terms of hygiene, but what needs to happen, that it's probably not going to make sense to open again for now.
And Anna, what accessibility do you have, and has it gotten worse or better in terms of?
It sounds like it's like San Francisco. I'm obsessed with this video. I hadn't seen it before. Catherine, you look like you're taking drugs. You also simultaneously look like your 10-year-old little sister self of setting up your your like office. It's so cute. It's so Catherine.
I know, I loved it. I think it's a great look into, like, you know, we don't usually have a camera following us when we're getting our espresso, but those little things I find are so important to like mental health, to just feel like you have some sense of your life getting back. And I didn't think about the fact that because we've had that freedom to at least get takeout, and at least, you know, and our restaurants in the Bay Area have, you know, I just went to one that reopened just recently. It had been closed even though they could have stayed open, but they learned from everyone else around them. So that you went to one window and you kind of yelled your name, and then you went over to the other window and someone else set it down, and then he walked away, and then I went back, and like, we're all trained a little bit to do this, but it's fairly new for you guys.
Yes, and it's hard. I don't know about you guys, but it really is hard to communicate with a mask. I realize I'm not mother tongue Italian. I realize I can't understand what people are saying because I can't lip read. And so I find myself just screaming and screaming at people and not really understanding. Does it happen when you're speaking your own language, I wonder?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, we
definitely
scream at people. Anna, are you screaming at people?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'm not quite, I have a little bit of like, I think it's face blindness, where you're not great at recognizing faces and stuff. So
yes.
Now it's even worse. I'm like, half your face is gone. I have no idea who you are. Do you live next to me? I have no idea.
So let me ask you this before, because I'm going to play this next video from Catherine. In terms of masks and the requirement and how prevalent of what you're seeing out there. Let me actually, I'll play this video first, and let me pull up the sound because we can hear it and hear a little bit of the interaction with an auto mechanic. Okay.
This is Giorgio. He's the mechanic who works right across the street from us. And he's just told me that he's got a lot of work today because nobody's car is starting because they haven't been driving for the last 2 months.
You know, but I noticed he wasn't wearing a mask. That leads to my mask questions.
Yes. No, it's not obligatory when you're outside. It's highly recommended, but it's not. The only places that it's absolutely required are when you're inside a space. So if you're inside a store or a supermarket or any other indoor space, you have to wear a mask, but outside you don't. So. And
are you seeing people all wearing masks, or it's in their pockets?
Most people are wearing masks, but people who, I don't know about what about the States, but here people don't run with masks because the masks that we have, you can't really get oxygen when you're running. Like you can't get enough to be able to really do sports. So people who are doing any sort of exercise are not wearing masks, and people who are just out going to the supermarket or doing a necessary errand have masks. That's usually.
Well, it's because it's been an interesting debate, and some of the news coverage, depending on the different states here in the U.S., there's a debate over whether you can force people to wear them, and certain states have backed off from it. Other states are requiring it, and and I see people on social media who are, they are all one way or the other. In the Bay Area, you don't have to wear them when you are exercising as well, but you are being advised to carry it in your pocket. So if you pass someone on a trail and you're going to come within a close distance to them, you're able to throw it on, and the sensitivity to it is, I think, different depending on in grocery stores, everyone's wearing them, and that's required. And I think it's because the stores are saying you can't come in unless you have something over your face. But it's an interesting thing. How is it playing out in New York, Anna?
People are so bad. They have their masks on, but it's like under their nose, walking, talking, putting on their chin, like a beard cover, and like talking to their friend. It's a mess. And I would think in New York, because you guys are so exposed to it, I think some of the talk I've heard in San Francisco is because our curve has flattened here quite a bit, and that they thought our social distancing, and our shelter in place, which has been in place longer than most, in the Bay Area, even longer than kind of anyone in the U.S., that's great, that the numbers are low, but it has taken away some of that fear that it's spreading everywhere. So then it's harder to convince some people. But in New York, if you're having hotspots emerge and it's
it's likely that someone knows someone who's had COVID and people still don't want to wear masks, then it's kind of an interesting situation in terms of how you get everyone, as we go back into the world, all over the world, into a new habit. Asia is always well known for people wear masks all the time. It's very culturally accepted, but I think there's some resistance here, at least. Would you use?
That was also, wasn't it sort of a gift of SARS? I mean, that was something that was learned through SARS, was the idea that, and I think there was so much confusion about masks in the beginning. When I, from Italy, said to even my mother, I said, well, if you're going to the dentist, this was maybe the end of February, beginning of March, I said, wear a mask for heaven's sakes. And she said, but everybody's saying that masks aren't going to protect me from anything. So why would I wear a mask? So there was a lot of that at the beginning. And because there wasn't the idea of, well, but you could also be spreading it, and I was walking on the sidewalk yesterday and there was a guy with a mask, and I get it, because masks can be really frustrating. And he was literally walking and he just went like this. He just pulled it down. He went, and then he put it back on.
Well, yeah.
Leave this. And my husband said, yeah, but I get it, because I had to cough with the mask and it was just gross. I mean, you just kind of
you don't want to cough into the mask, even though you're protecting other people. There's that. It is hot, and there's no way you could go running with a mask. I mean, you could, but you're just sweat. It's uncomfortable. And then people have different kinds, right? So if you have the ones that are truly those N95 masks, I mean, there's a reason why you see nurses with blisters all around their faces, because they're so tight. If they're actually going to work the way they're supposed to work, it's supposed to not prevent all, all the rest of us have, bandanas and, homemade whatever. And it's just, but I think I in my head equate it to a little bit like secondhand smoke, right? That the person smoking, you're not allowed to smoke because you shouldn't smoke, but because that smoke now affects someone else who didn't decide to light a cigarette. And so but I think it's a hard thing to kind of talk to just work around in your head on why you're wearing one.
It could be that I got the COVID from not wearing a mask when weeks and weeks ago. Could be that like walk I took outside where everybody, I was wondering, like, maybe this isn't good. They say, maybe taking a walk is bad because people are pretty close. And what if it's, and that's when we were thinking masks didn't do anything. But I think, I still don't know exactly.
Well, I think that's, I talked to people.
It was awful to have that you don't want to get this.
You don't want to get it. And I think that's the other, question that is, I think, as we don't know, we don't have as many answers. We have more answers than we ever had, but we don't have as many still on immunity, on, testing, on all these things, and on when it's safe to do what. And, and we still have this 14-day rule. I was talking to someone, a journalist in France, earlier this week, and he was talking also about the tourism part, which in Rome and in Italy in general and in New York, that's obviously another issue too, is when people start traveling state to state, country to country. France just instituted a quarantine requirement through July 24th in France. So if you come there from any other country, you have to sit in quarantine for 14 days, which, I was saying, if you've ever tried to go to Europe in the summer, that's big season, right? That's when everyone is there anyway. And so, it is one of those questions too on how we're going to manage that when it happens. I'll pull up another one of Catherine's videos by the forum.
All the way down here.
Right. And
there are no tourists, but they
there you are.
said
In
the
terms
Coliseum,
of,
like all the other
it looks
museums, are going to
still
open on May 18th.
pretty empty out there.
So you can see people are
You can
working.
hear her
There's
on the
some
video,
people walking
too.
around.
Oh, you can. So for some reason, I can't hear it.
Absolutely desolate.
But then I'll let her take you through it because I've listened to that.
So here we are above the Coliseum at the beginning.
So were you surprised to see all the, what you did see out there? Or is that what you expected?
Yeah, no, I mean, compared to a week ago, there's a lot of people and movement and activity and the workers there. So it was, really heartening. But when you think of Rome in May, the line for the Colosseum is all the way down. I mean, it is so packed because this city lives on tourism. I mean, we, for example, have a little bed and breakfast, and we rent it out, and we had, reservations all the way through next year. And everything has been canceled, rightly, understandably. But there's a big question about the economy here, because it's like, when everything is based on tourism, when are people gonna not just want to come, but when are they gonna feel comfortable to start planning again,
Right.
coming?
I don't know. I mean, Anna, New York's like that too with, I went to New York last summer and there was no place I went that wasn't packed,
Yeah.
and whatever it is that you do in New York usually involves a crowd, whether you're packing on a boat to go to the Statue of Liberty, or you are standing in line in the theater district to get into, a show, or just actually going to dinner, you're in line, or trying to get one place on the subway, as we just talked about earlier. I mean, and as a New Yorker, do you even want people to come to your city right now?
Yeah, no, not really.
So there's
Walking down
that.
the street, you don't, the sidewalks, you pass people.
Yeah.
But that's
And
like Rome too, probably.
yeah, I think it's every big city. San Francisco is as well. I think that's the other part of it, that all three of our cities are going to have to figure out, at what point that is even something they encourage. Let's listen to one more video here as we start, because I love the Colosseum, so I'm partial.
Here's the Piazza of the Colosseum. Up until yesterday, this was completely dead. Not a car, not a person in sight. But as you can see now, it's not the regular Roman traffic, but it's getting there. Here's the Piazza of the Colosseum.
So yeah, that's empty. I've never seen it able to kind of walk through that space and and
It's, I said to my kids, we live right up from the Coliseum. I said, we really should go when it opens on May 18th, because there are not going to, it's going to be safe because it's outdoors and there are going to be no people, no lines. But it's incredible. The thing that's incredible for me is to hear the sounds of traffic, because it's been 2 months of silence. And this is a very, very loud city like New York. I mean, I don't know sounds in New York, but just the radical, the idea that now we're hearing Motorini go by and voices of people, it's just so different.
yeah,
We always hear the sound of at 7:00, we all go out and cheer, and so does my daughter, and we go, and you hear horns honking and cars. We've always had a lot of, not a lot, it's probably similar to what it is now in Rome. But then you hear ambulances all the time. I forgot to mention that in the last times we talked, but that's the scary soundscape of New York now, is these ambulances.
I wonder where both of you guys, I mean, I think, Katherine, you probably have a little more buoyancy, to use a term, just in terms of having a step in the right direction. I think, in California, we are seeing some openings, although the Bay Area is stricter than the rest of the state. But you also see, in California, people are supposed to be sheltering in place, but 2 or 3 counties have already said we're not going to. There's a lot of pushback, I think, in various parts of the country. I think it's been a long time, 7 weeks, going into 8, looking into June and talking about June instead of. How are people's patience levels in terms of where people are feeling in your respective places?
Katherine, are people not patient, or?
Well, I think they are. I mean, people are done. There are a lot of mental health issues. There are a lot of issues of abuse, both domestic abuse, child abuse. I mean, you hear about the other collateral victims of the lockdown. And so I think that's one of the things, not just the economics, that is pushing this opening as much as possible. But I think that Italians, on the one hand, there's sort of an anarchy in the sense that they don't trust government and they don't trust laws. You know, they're notorious for going through red, you know, traffic lights and things like that. But I think what an Italian does culturally as an Italian thinks, is this law something that resonates with me? Do I find this to be the right thing? And if I find it to be the right thing, I will obey it no matter what. And I think that with this, with COVID, seeing what has happened, I think Italians all over the country saw it and said, yes, this is what we've got to do, and this is what we've all got to do. So there's there's optimism, but it's very, very cautious. And another thing in Italy is that everybody is so geared toward the summer. I mean, it's sort of like the ritual of going to the beach in the summer. And so all of the country is thinking, if we can just make it to the summer, if we can just make it to the summer. And the president just said the other day, it was funny to the whole country, you will have your summer vacation. So I think there was a great sigh. The whole country got said, oh, we're going to be able to go somewhere.
Yeah, give me an end date. Yeah, just give me something that I can, you know, like I'm gonna do one more video from you, because this is the motto, and let's listen and you can explain this.
This banner that you see all over Rome, andrà tutto bene, means everything is going to be okay. And it's been the motto for the last 2 months, right next to the Virgin Mary saying, I am with you.
So you're saying that you were seeing that motto kind of around all over?
Yes, even on terraces, all kids have drawn rainbows saying, you know, everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be okay. And that's been important, because I think when you're walking around, at least in the last 2 months, when we've been walking around the streets, even if you go out with your dog or whatever, you see rainbows, you don't just see shutters closed and darkness.
That's important. How is our patience level in New York? It sounds like to me, Anna, honestly, that it hasn't really gotten better. That we have rainbows in Rome, and we're still working it out in New York.
It's so, I mean, I'm having some sister jealousy right now of like having a country that's not divided. And
yeah,
that's the hardest part of thinking about this in a bigger way, is like, how are we a country? How are we not just these divided states that are handling it so differently and without a cohesive leadership? It's depressing.
Well, and I think you talk about it. I mean, you're a therapist, obviously. That's
yeah.
I think for all of us to work through it, that is part of the challenge, is to, you know, like if you told me for sure I'd have summer, that would make me feel better, you know.
Yeah.
But if you tell me, no one's telling me that. so maybe that's why I'm having jealousy of your sister too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
thanks, Catherine.
I'll be like the annoying therapist, but like, we aren't going to have a summer. Like, I mean, you're not hearing that, because the reality, you could hear that tomorrow from the president, and that we'd know, oh, no, that's not true. We're not going to. The numbers are going up. New epicenters are happening all over the country. People aren't listening to the stay-at-home orders and demonstrating, and it's a mess. So we're not going to have a summer, you know. I'm indefinitely postponing my wedding. We had made it for August 1st, but people aren't gonna, you know, we were doing it in New Orleans, but it's not gonna.
And the numbers are going down there, but it does feel like we're in a little bit of this, as opposed to a down, which was what we wanted. We wanted to just go down and stay down, but it doesn't sound like anyone's predicting that that's a realistic assumption.
Yeah. I mean, that was just so incredible to hear Catherine talk about, like, oh, there's hope, because there's this kind of, we have buckled down, we did it, and it may mean that we get to have some fun at the end of this, and it's in sight. It just doesn't feel in sight.
At least we know that it's a possibility for someone, which makes it a possibility for others. And then of course, here's the other thing. I have baby pictures of you guys, because your mom found those. And if nothing else, and those aren't even baby pictures. Look at that.
The teenage modeling years.
I love it. I love it. One of those pictures got cut off, but oh, so there's that, right? Through the years, you're still in it together, even from across the world, and and great pictures never go away. So if that's all I can say to boost spirits,
And how amazing it's going to be when everybody's able to see each other again. I mean, the incredible thing yesterday or Monday when it was the first day was these scenes of all of these grandchildren going back to their grandparents. And obviously the grandparents were so happy to see them, but the parents were also like, here, take them for 3 days, please. We'll see.
I know, but is that's allowed? I mean, all of that is allowed?
It's allowed now. Yeah, you can go and see family members in your region. So they don't want people to go outside of the region. So there are all of these, memes and group chats saying, well, Rome is a region, like when it was an empire, it was pretty much all consider that our region, North Africa all the way around.
All roads lead to Rome. Maybe it's an Italian wedding, Anna.
There you go. That's clearly what should happen.
Maybe I'm just planning your wedding now in terms of Rome's a beautiful place.
Yes.
And they have summer. So
I know. And they're going to get their summer. So
well,
they're going to get their summer.
Well,
we are rooting for you. We are rooting for you, and we are rooting for Italy to get back their summer so we can all dream of summer. We might get back our winter, which would be great in New York, right? Yeah. You can go out and the sidewalks are filled with snow and it's freezing. So okay, well, wedding in Italy. I've just decided. So the next time I talk,
it won't be packed with tourists because coming back.
And I would argue you'd probably get a pretty good deal.
I think we would. A white wedding mask.
Yes.
I think I've seen they make them. It's scary.
Yes. Yeah, it's a whole new world. All right. Well, Katherine and Anna, thank you so much again for the chat. I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon as the world continues to turn and change, and we just try to keep up, right?
Thank you so much for having us.
So fun.
And for more interviews, of course, you can go to coronavirusnow.com. Thanks so much.